Ron Paul weighed in on the 2016 election while he was on MSNBC. Let's see what he had to say.
Dr. Stein is polling lower than Gary Johnson in this, never holding office, elected higher than the Lexington Mass town meeting, which is akin to a town council member. For you, what makes her qualified for the highest office in the land?
Well, I think there's a little bit of misinformation there because I haven't endorsed anybody. I haven't told any supporters who are interested for whom they should vote. But I have mentioned her name because I have to look for bits and pieces in all the candidates that come up and try to put it together and have a libertarian message. Liberty is all chopped to pieces. Liberals defend some parts of liberty and the conservatives other parts. And progressives are pretty good, too, on foreign policy. So in the Congress, I worked with progressives, and we talked a lot about foreign policy and opposition to corporatism and those sorts of things. But then on occasion, Gary will say something good about the economy. Even Donald Trump, I found him talking critically of the bubble that the Federal Reserve created. But all those things, if you put them together, you can the libertarian message. That's my goal, so I haven't literally endorsed anybody.
So has anyone reached out to you from Jill Stein? You've given her compliments and tried to alert people to her in terms of what they should be looking for. So who's reached out to you to gain that real lock-in of an endorsement?
Well, I have, in a way, made the statement that, people, if they're unhappy with the two major candidates, and I think that's the case for a lot of people, that's the majority of the people that are unhappy. And I said that if the independents who don't know what to do and who should they pick, I say if you tend to lead toward progressivism and liberalism and you, are interested in expressing yourself, you can vote for the Green Party because certainly you could say, well, I like a lot of what she says about civil liberties, and I like what she says about foreign policy. She's probably at best on foreign policy at the moment. But on Gary Johnson, he doesn't come across with a crisp libertarian message. But if you want to express yourself by I'm voting for the non-aggression principle, the principle that creates the libertarian message, and that is nobody can commit aggression.
Right.
Individuals can't, nor government. So you can express yourself, but unfortunately, there's not a crisp answer. Say, this individual represents liberty. If you vote for this person, you'll be voting for liberty and truly expressing yourself.
So there were like 30 articles yesterday talking about how Ron Paul endorsed Jill Stein. And they were referencing, I think, an earlier interview that he had done on Fox Business, if I'm not mistaken, where he was asked by the different candidates. And he didn't say he was voting for any of them, but he complimented different ones in different ways. And he actually kind of went after Gary Johnson a little bit because he's basically saying he's not libertarian enough. But he said, Jill Stein, even though she's a progressive, I think she's right on foreign policy and some social issues, so on and so forth. But what's amazing is it was just massively misleading. Like, I read a bunch of the articles, and then I listened to all of his different comments, and he really never... I mean, MSNBC had a quote on the bottom of the screen there about how he said, vote for her or something, talking about Jill Stein. I wasn't able to find him saying that. And if indeed he did say that, in context, it was surrounded by things like the qualifiers he just mentioned there. Like, if you're a progressive and you lean in a liberal direction, yada yada, then vote for her. Like, it wasn't just a flat-out endorsement. So there's a lot of misleading shit that's floating around here with him, where people are saying Ron Paul endorsed Jill Stein. Now, having said all that, look, this goes back to a point that I've made for a really long time, and I have a lot of people who really agree with me on this, but then there's a lot of people who really disagree with me on this, and I don't get why this is so controversial. But I like libertarians. I have a love-hate thing going on with them, and... for the longest time, I've proposed a libertarian and progressive alliance, especially when it comes to governing, because those are the groups that always end up saving the day when you actually look at Washington and how it functions. You have the Progressive Caucus get together with libertarian-leaning Tea Party members, and they lead the charge on actually bringing us better answers, better solutions when it comes to the NSA. When it comes to drug laws and stuff like that. There were times when Alan Grayson and Ron Paul worked together and they were very successful. Rand Paul has worked with many progressives and been successful on many fronts. So the only hope to actually get shit done is to have a libertarian progressive alliance. Now, don't get me wrong, I vehemently disagree with libertarians on 50% of the issues. I think on many economic issues, they make no sense, and it almost becomes a pseudo-religion the way that they argue, where it's always theory above empirical reality, and they treat the market like it's this god that you can't touch and never do any regulation and get rid of the minimum wage laws and the child labor laws, and the market will sort itself out, bro. So I hate all that aspect of it. But look, you can say that while also saying libertarians and I agree almost 100% on the NSA, on the issue of Wall Street bailouts, on the issue of corporate welfare more generally, on the issue of foreign policy, on the issue of drug laws. That's not somebody selling out as a liberal or a progressive. That's somebody who's being nuanced and intellectually honest. So it is just true that, because I've had people like argue with me on Twitter when I make points like this, and they try to say, I don't even know what the argument is. What, somehow libertarians are just as bad as conservative Republicans? But that's just factually wrong. That's just not true. Libertarians do want to stop mass surveillance. They do want to stop the Wall Street bailouts. They do want to stop corporate welfare. They do want to stop U.S. imperialism and being involved in fucking 6 or 7 different interventions right now. They do want to legalize drugs. So this idea of like, no, I'm going to treat Rand Paul like he's as crazy as Ted Cruz. No, that makes you crazy. That does make you crazy. And not to say Rand Paul's a crisp libertarian, as Ron Paul would say, but he's libertarian-ish. So there are some areas where you can have a meeting of the minds. So, Ron Paul's a guy who, although I disagree with him massively, colossally, on 50% of the issues, I agree with him on the other 50%. And it's a refreshing voice. I always say that, when it comes to discussions or debates having with political philosophies that disagree with me, my favorite one to do is with libertarians. Because I know I'm not wrong about 100% of what I believe and what I say and what I discuss. I know that. So talking to a creationist, talking to, a fundamentalist Hindu, talking to a Ted Cruz fan who actually thinks Ted Cruz represents some sort of coherent philosophy, in many respects, that's just a waste of time. I mean, they know so little about the world, and their worldview is so preposterous that it's like, what are you doing? But when it comes to libertarians, there's enough mutual respect there on certain issues that you go, okay, you know what? Let me challenge myself and my own philosophy and my own ideas and engage in this open exchange of ideas, because this is a person who's a formidable opponent and somebody who has a competing philosophy, and maybe I learn something, maybe they learn something, but this is where discussions make sense. So I've always kind of had that mentality towards libertarians specifically, and Ron Paul's just giving another example of it right here. He's honestly one of the only people who I've heard come out there and give a nuanced take so far on the candidates, where, people, the fucking Team Hillary people and Team Trump people are, I want to fucking wash my brain because it feels dirty after I listen to these idiots drone on. My candidate is right about everything, and they're so great, and they're not serial liars, even though they're both serial liars. You just sound so stupid. It's refreshing to have somebody come out there and say, look, man, Jill Stein, hey, I'm a libertarian, but Jill Stein, foreign policy, social issues, great, I like her. Gary Johnson, okay, on some issues, good, I like him when he talks about economics, but he's not a pure enough libertarian in my mind. Donald Trump, I guess I liked him when he spoke about the Fed or whatever it was. Hillary Clinton, I guess I like her when she speaks about, decriminalizing drugs or continuing Obama's legacy in that front. But hey, there's some good sides and downsides. Everybody, let's look at each individual issue and be rational about it. It's refreshing to hear that because it seems like nobody else is fucking doing it.